What is going on, all you awesome superhero aficionados? This is the Heroes and Mutants podcast. I'm Nick with my co-hosts Jimmy and Eric. Unfortunately, Ruben couldn't be with us today, but today is a good day, and we are your number one source of superhero talk. So first things first, this is something that I was not aware of at all, and it is kind of crazy just given the fact that how connected we are to anything superhero news. But a game came out yesterday that I had June 16th, this game came out. And I had no idea about it. And I was getting ready for work. I was, doing my hair. And out of the bathroom, I can just hear Cowabunga. My roommate was playing video games and I hear Cowabunga. And I kind of like peeked my head. I was like, did I hear that right? And I get closer and I see that he's playing a Ninja Turtle game and it's all pixelated and it looks like, I thought it was Turtles in Time, like remastered for PS4. But then I look closer and it was a completely different game. And I'm like, what the hell is this? He's all like, oh, dude, this is Shredder's Revenge. This just came out yesterday. And the thing that also really stuck out to me was the soundtrack. They really worked hard and really tried their best to have the soundtrack sound good. Wu-Tang Clan is actually on the soundtrack, Ghostface Killah and Raekwon, so you know that I was already going to like that. So I think the cool thing about this is it's a beat-em-up game, and it's published by Dotemu. I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah.
And it's based on, it obviously takes its inspiration from the 1987 cartoon, but also it feels very similar to something like Turtles in Time and a lot of the games that Konami produced in the late 80s and the early 90s. So this feels pretty cool. I mean, Eric had talked about this a little bit. You want to go into a little bit more detail about that, Eric?
Yeah, like as a gaming fan, I think it's a really good game. Like it looks really good. It just came out and it calls back to the older like beat 'em up style games that I'm sure a lot of people play, like Red Dragon and obviously the old Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle games. But this one is just it ups the ante. It's up to 6 players and you can play online too. So if you have your friends that are playing as well, you can just jump into a game with them. So it's really cool. It looks really fun, and I'm definitely gonna get this game. But I also want to mention like it does a lot of call out to other video games as well. So, and if you're a fan of fighting games, you're really gonna like this because a lot of the moves, first of all, each character has like their own set of moves, their own specials, so you can actually have a favorite character that you want to play moving forward. But at the same time, they borrow a lot of moves from other famous characters from other games, like Ryu and Ken, Chun-Li from Street Fighter. There's a lot of moves like from Mortal Kombat as well. There's like the Liu Kang flying kick, and you see a lot of callouts just as Easter eggs for gaming fans. But yeah, I mean, overall, it looks like fun. It's a good like couch game for a lot of people to just hang out and play. I'm excited for it.
It's getting really good reviews right now, so that's a cool thing to see. I'm definitely going to sit down and just have a day where I go ham with it and go crazy. Because obviously I talk a lot about Turtles in Time, that being my favorite game. I just played that on Wednesday actually too. So pretty cool. I had no idea that this was even a thing, and I was super surprised and taken aback by it. So can't wait to play it. Make sure you guys go out and get it. It's going to be awesome for every TMNT comic book fan. And next on the list, we had, this is another tragic kind of thing that we're going to be talking about. And it's crazy to think because we had talked about the passing of Neil Adams and George Perez earlier this year. So that's 2 comic book icons gone just in this year alone. And unfortunately, there's somebody else who is joining them. Legendary Tim Sale has passed away at the age of 66 on June 16th. And he did a lot of he's mainly known as an artist, and he did a lot of his best work with Jeff Loeb. He did such things with DC as Batman Haunted Nights, which was reworked into Legends of the Dark Knight Halloween specials, Batman The Long Halloween, which is probably his best work or his most known work. He did Batman Dark Victory, Superman for All Seasons, and Catwoman When in Rome. He also did some things in Marvel, and he was known to produce the so-called color books, such as Daredevil Yellow, Spider-Man Blue, and Hulk Gray, also in Captain America White. So and also you'd probably kind of aware that he actually did some of the artwork for Heroes because Jeff Loeb was working as an executive producer on there. So he helped him out with because of their frequent collaboration. So it's pretty sad because obviously we had talked a lot about especially when you think about The Long Halloween, because Long Halloween is such an influential comic book graphic novel on not only Batman, but just the comic book industry as a whole. And I know this is something because Jimmy had talked about that too, that was pretty much his favorite Batman
My favorite
story.
Batman.
So
Yeah.
I know that you were pretty. This was going to really hit you pretty hard. So how did you take this?
I was pretty shocked. And then people gotta remember, The Long Halloween is a big influence on both The Dark Knight and the Batman. And if you like read that comic book and watch those movies, you could see how much they took different things. Like they don't adapt the same elements, but they both lift heavily from those stories. I just think that him and Jeff Loeb were such a good team. The writing style really went well. With Jeff Loeb has like a very cinematic look to his comic books. I remember like the first time I opened up The Long Halloween, I was struck by like the panels and the look. It was kind of the opening is kind of made to be like a tribute to The Godfather, and it does a really good job at that. I love the way that he draws Batman for one thing. I like the long pointy-eared Batman. That's my preference. I love the way that he draws all the villains. He had like this look that was somewhere between realism, but not too much realism, and something a little bit more cartoony, but it had like this good sweet spot in between. And he did some of the best stuff with Batman. I mean, Dark Victory, which is the sequel to The Long Halloween, is great. The Batman Haunted Nights, the Halloween special, is all really good. I mean, he's always going to be known, I think, mostly for what he did on Batman, and rightfully so. I haven't read all of the stuff he did for Marvel, but I did read Spider-Man Blue. Check that out if you're a Spider-Man fan, if you haven't read that. That's a really sad, emotional story. It's about Peter Parker on Valentine's Day. He's married to Mary Jane, and he starts kind of like reminiscing about Gwen Stacy, and he starts feeling bad. So he starts telling a story of how he kind of like fell in love with Gwen Stacy on a tape recorder. And Mary Jane like overhears the story, and instead of being angry, she feels like sympathy for him and like tells her like, let her know that I miss her. I'm getting a little emotional talking about it, but it's such a good story and like great artwork. Jeff Loeb was an amazing comic book artist. I love his work. I'm a huge fan. I was really shocked by his loss.
Yeah. Especially when you just think about that too. Oh, go ahead, Eric. Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just going along with like the work that he did with Marvel, just his work on also Daredevil and Hulk, obviously two of my favorite heroes. He did Daredevil Yellow and Hulk Gray, and it was really cool to see that because those came out in like the early 2000s, and the way that he was able to call back like the original drawings of these characters, like is like the Daredevil Yellow costume where he has like the red in the middle and on his head. Like I always thought that costume looked weird until they came out with Daredevil Yellow and that comic book, and he just did such an amazing job with doing like recalling the old costume, but still making it something new and something fresh. And same with Hulk Gray, right? Like we all know, like the Hulk originally black and gray comic books, and then he slowly transitioned into green, but then just going back to that original style, but nonetheless making it his own. Like we definitely lost one of the greatest artists to ever bless like comic books in general.
Yeah, I mean, such a gift. And the fact that he did like both a lot of significant stuff for DC and Marvel. Catwoman 1 in Rome is also actually another good story too. But yeah, I would say that the two works that I would say if you haven't read The Long Halloween, but that's such a cliche that of course you recommend.
That everyone is going to be, anybody who's into comics is going to tell you need to check out The Long Halloween.
Still, if you haven't read it, now would be a good time to do so. And if you want to look for his non-Batman work, because that's what he always is known for, I would say check out Spider-Man Blue. It's a great story. Great artwork. Very big loss for the comic book industry.
Yeah, because especially like I've read a lot of his DC stuff, obviously because I'm a big Batman fan. So granted, that was going to be obvious what I was going to be reading, but I had no idea that he actually worked with Marvel and I remember like seeing and hearing about the colored editions, and I just didn't get a chance to read those and check those out, or even just see the artwork. So now I'm gonna go back and check those out, and can't wait to dive into those and see his spin on it, especially because it's going to be calling back to like Daredevil with that. So that's going to be pretty awesome. And sucks that this happened. We've already lost 3 pioneers and legends in the comic book industry. So make sure that you guys recognize and are giving a lot of recognition to these artists and these creators and writers while they're still here, because in a flash they're going to be gone. And like, especially when you think of just the last couple of years, Danny O'Neill we lost a couple of years ago too. So just crazy to think how short life is, how precious it is, and a lot of these guys, if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have everything that we have in this comic book. Especially when you think of something like The Long Halloween, that has been so influential in a lot of the media and a lot of the stuff that we see with Batman. And you think of even like the Nolan trilogy, and then also too with the Batman with Matt Reeves, like that was a comic book that inspired both of those.
They both love that story.
Yeah, definitely. So rest in peace to Tim Sell, always a legend. Thank you for your contributions, brother. Moving on from that, it's just such a cliche to just keep going back, because we just talked about this recently, and it seems like every week we're hearing something different about this guy, and you guys probably know this is coming if you've been involved in what is going on recently. But Ezra Miller just can't stop.
I hear.
I'm not involved.
Well, involved I meant as far as like social media, but Ezra Miller can't stop involving himself in controversies. This time might be the nail in his career, as he recently has been accused of going on the run with an 18-year-old girl who he was also accused of grooming since she was a child, and was mocking police from social media. So is it fair to say at this point that there is no kind of retribution he can do, or any kind of thing he can do to fix his career? It's just kind of over for him at this point?
I really don't know. I mean, I don't know what Warner Brothers is going to do about this, because they're not going to cancel like a $200 million movie that they made. They're too far along with it, and they even said that in a report recently, that they have to commit him because they're too far along in it now. But that was before the kidnapping basically that's going on right now, and he's missing too. I don't think they can find him right now.
They were trying to serve him papers, and then that's the whole thing about him being on the run. And then it came out later that apparently that it's reported that he's on the run with this 18-year-old girl.
I don't even know if he's even alive, to be honest with you, at this point. Like, I don't mean that in a bad way, but he doesn't. I mean, Ezra Miller does not seem well. They do not seem well. I don't know what to say about it. I feel bad. I really don't know. Like, I have no idea what Warner Brothers is going to do about this. I don't think a studio has ever had to face this kind of catastrophe with their star in a big budget blockbuster. And you know what, Warner Brothers, you should have released this movie 5 years ago. You could have been almost done with Ezra Miller before this. Maybe, like, I'm serious. Like they're probably feeling dumb right now that they could have already had like a Flash series underway, and it could have been like deep into it. Like, it would have been okay by now to like recast Ezra Miller, but at this point, I don't know what's going to go on. This is the most unpredictable thing. I don't think we've ever seen anything like this in Hollywood, with like
not on this kind of scale, or
not
with
on
this kind of scope. Scale,
it's like this big movie coming out. It's a bad situation.
It's very bad,
and I don't know what's wrong with Ezra Miller, but I hope that they get help, because it's not. One thing is to, like, you know, the weird behavior that he's been involved with, and like, okay, I can overlook that, but like kidnapping a girl that you supposedly groomed, this is extreme. It's really extreme, and I have no idea.
It's chartering into way different territory, and one that obviously, especially just given of what else is going on.
Is he even allowed to go to the premiere of his own?
I don't even know at this point. Honestly, it doesn't seem like it. Like,
he might be in jail. At that point, yeah.
I
think.
What do you think about all this, Eric?
I don't know. I was talking to Jimmy about this earlier. It's like, at this point, I wouldn't even blame Warner Bros. If they just didn't do the Flash anymore. Just make it go straight to HBO Max, something like that. Because I don't know how many people are actually going to go watch it. I know there's a lot of people that are just like, I don't like Ezra Miller. I don't like what he's done. I'm not going to go watch this movie. But I don't know. I don't know how it would do in the box office. It might just come at a loss now for Warner Bros. At this point.
One of the things that I know that Warner Brothers, one of the reasons they push it back, still a stupid idea, is that they're confident that it's a quality film. They're confident that they have something that's going to like be a real crowd pleaser on their hands, which is why they should have just pushed it out already before the controversy.
This would have been last year. Then all what could have happened now is like, well, we're just going to recast him, and he's not going to be around anymore as a Flash. So
yeah, because even if, like, I believe that there's always room for redemption for someone, but when your career is like, on this scale, it won't be for maybe like 10 years or something. Like, he would have to go to therapy, do some kind of rehab. I don't know what's going on with him, but he would have to he's gonna have to work to get back, because it's a lot. It's a lot what he's done lately, and he's really jeopardized his career, and it's nuts.
Yeah. At this point, I mean, I think that is a very fair thing for them to do, which is to push this out, just because this can definitely impact their box office numbers for sure, especially if all these people say, oh, well, I'm not going to go see Ezra Miller, and all this stuff in the media and all this reported stuff is going on, and he's doing this, and every other week something else happens.
If it does come
out, I definitely think
if they do release it, the box office is going to be on Michael Keaton's shoulders.
Yeah.
Yep.
That is going to
or if anything, maybe they might try to work it so that it's a Michael Keaton-centered movie, which happens to have the Flash somehow. I could kind of maybe see that working. That's why I don't think they're not going to cancel this movie, because obviously this is going to be the one hinting at the multiverse and opening all those other doors, their version of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. So I think
it has Ben Affleck in it too as Batman. I don't know, man. It's bad. It's not a good situation for them.
Yeah.
This is why they should have just had Grant Gustin do the Flash in the movies too, right? Just take the Flash from the show. Everyone loved him. Just put him over here. Oh man, I don't know. It's such a mess.
I mean, I wouldn't mind that.
I'll probably still watch the movie. To be honest, I'm probably gonna still go watch it. I think I can separate the actor from the character well enough, but I don't know if everyone else would be able to do that.
I feel bad about it because, look, I'm the type of person where I separate the actors from the character. And the thing is, Ezra Miller is not the only person who worked on this movie. There's a lot of talented people who put a lot of time, effort, who gave up big parts. I mean, obviously there's going to be big paychecks, but they gave up big parts of their life and poured their heart and their soul and their dedication.
Well, seeing Michael Keaton come back to this role after 30 years, I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, seeing Michael Keaton come back. Andy Muschietti, the director who did the It movies, which were both pretty big hits.
Yeah.
It's not really fair to all the people who worked on the film and poured themselves into it, because it doesn't all come down to one person. But again, I don't know how to gauge how the public feels about that, how everybody's going to feel about that, because I can separate the two and realize that it's a performance. It doesn't mean that I support Ezra Miller's actions because I enjoy a Flash movie or I want to see the Flash film. So I just feel bad for everybody involved who put so much work and time into this movie and years of it too.
I mean, can't they just deep fake Grant Gustin's head onto Ezra Miller's body and just do that? I mean, that's a very viable option, I think.
Yeah. See, I think it's interesting, and we're eventually going to go into this topic as well, but I haven't heard as much pushback from people. Ezra Miller's done all these bad things. I'm not going to watch The Flash. But when you start hearing about the Amber Heard thing with Johnny Depp, and there's a whole petitions to get her removed and all this, it's it's not. It doesn't. To be honest, even to me,
that's not fair. I mean, I'm not saying I'm trying to justify anything about Amber Heard, but I don't think what she did is really on the scale of what Ezra Miller is doing at this point. I feel like this is a whole new level. And it is strange that he doesn't receive the same type of blowback. You're right. I don't see petitions. I don't see people online complaining or up in arms or saying they're not going to go see the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Because of Ezra Miller. So
yeah. Warner Brothers definitely has a mess on their hands. I don't know how they're going to resolve this. And I think it's very viable that it could be released in HBO Max exclusively, but just given the budget and how much money went into this movie, they might just have to release it out in theaters at this point. That Marlene might not be an option. So where do you go from here? You recast him, or you just don't have the Flash involved in the future? But I would really like to see the Flash. Hopefully it just is a big nightmare and a big scenario that no company would want to see themselves in ever. And going on from that, it's funny, we go from one controversy to another. One big controversy to a lesser one, like you guys have just said. But it was earlier reported Amber Heard's role as Mera will be cut from Aquaman 2 because of the PR nightmare surrounding her. But now it's being reported that WB will recast her. However, Heard has denied any claims about her being recast. We won't know nothing until WB announces something. So what do you guys think is the most likely scenario? Will Heard's as Mera be in it, be cut, or be recast?
I think Wasn't it comicbook.com? So someone reported that they're already planning on reshoots for
Yeah.
Aquaman, so they can bring in a different actress.
Yeah.
But
This is nothing has been like set in stone. Nothing has been concrete yet, and then she's
It's
denying
not,
that happened. Or
that's not a guarantee at this point.
yeah,
That's another complicated situation for Warner Brothers. And I didn't actually think about this until Eric mentioned it. Like, look, it's not that I am like an Amber Heard. I'm not even going to get into the politics of that case because I do think she did some very strange and weird and questionable things. I don't think it's fair. For one, she has a smaller role in this movie than Ezra Miller has in The Flash. It's not nearly as essential to the film. And she's getting a lot more blowback. And I know a lot of people who say they wouldn't go saying, look, I would separate it, dude. I don't care. Like, that's the truth. And maybe some people that would piss some people off me saying I don't care, but I would go to the movie and I would just be able to look at it and see the character. This is another one. I don't know if you heard, they're reporting that they're adding Michael Keaton into the Aquaman movie too as Batman. I feel like they're throwing Michael Keaton everywhere. It's going to be his job to make up for all the controversies. It's like, it's okay, nostalgia. It's the old Batman. I feel like it's all on his shoulders to make up for Ezra Miller and Amber Heard.
Oh man,
no, you heard that, right? That they're considering throwing him in. I was like, that's just to offset the controversy of like.
Yeah, that's crazy. I hadn't heard that yet. This is the first time hearing about it.
I didn't hear about that at all.
It's not official. It's just things that are floating around, kind of like her being recast. That's not official. But who knows what's going on with the Warner Brothers execs and what they're doing and they're plotting and they're planning, because they can't be like, I'm pretty sure they're panicking behind closed doors right now.
They gotta be, just everything that's going on, and we've never seen any, let alone one of these incidents. But now you're working in the situation involving Ezra Miller, and every week it seems like something else is going on with him. I can't even imagine.
With Ezra Miller, it gets worse every week. He seems to find a way to top himself. Amber Heard was a very bad. I mean, obviously, it's not a good thing, but this is not like she comes out every week with a brand new controversy or like she can't.
Exactly.
Or like his keep escalating. Like, if it's at this point and it escalated this fast, just from him throwing chairs at people, him people filing restraining orders, to like from that to like grooming a kid from age 12 and then kidnapping them at age 18. And then disappearing, mocking law enforcement on social media, but going completely off the grid with somebody else. That's a whole other level of craziness that I don't even know, man.
That's why.
Lots of PR nightmares.
Yeah.
And Michael's going to have to save it all.
Because, I mean, that's the answer to everything, right? What do we do with this Morbius film? Well, we just throw Michael Keaton in there randomly without any explanation and without him having any connection to Spider-Man, but saying that Spider-Man is behind everything. So that's the answer. That's probably where Warner Brothers got that idea from, to just throw Michael Keaton everywhere. They're like, oh, well, if they're doing it in this multiverse, we might as well do the same thing.
It's his job now to rescue comic book fans. This is what his presence.
But in all seriousness, I mean, I think it's a stretch to say to recast her. Yeah, it didn't look good, everything that came about, especially once we learned just how much more involved in everything that she was, and then everything that happened to Johnny Depp, how unfair all that was. I wouldn't like to see it recast, but at the end of the day, I think her being in the movie is probably going to hurt the box office. And we said, like, this is not something to where she should have seen as much blowback as Ezra Miller, but she has seen something way significant. So I think with that in mind, they're paying attention to that. I think more than likely she's going to be cut, and then she's just not going to be around in the future, or they're going to cast another actress for this role. So that's why I think it was a little bit weird, because it was earlier reported that her scenes were going to be cut, and then another report that was unconfirmed said that she was going to be recasted. So in my mind, I'm like, well, is it because her role is more significant or more integral to the plot, and they couldn't just throw her out or cut her scenes completely? Her being the queen, well, not the queen, not yet, but she's Aquaman's love interest, obviously. So there must be something that guarantee a significant impact in the plot. So it just sucks everything. It's crazy to think about everything that's going to happen. And more than likely, it's just going to be reduced, and then they're just going to recast in the future.
Yeah.
So Warner Brothers is really looking at a crazy PR nightmare right now. Hopefully this this diminishes though because the court case is over, so hopefully it won't really, the memes will not go away, of course. But I think it just, knowing that Ezra Miller is doing something crazy every week and ups himself, that's probably going to be more the concern for the future. So
maybe they'll just release Flash earlier.
They really should have. I mean, yeah.
By now, just release it now. This weekend.
I mean, Jimmy should have been the head of Warner Brothers, and he would have been onto something from the very beginning, and he probably would have been the
that movie would have been
trillionaire ever.
That movie would have came out in 2017.
As it should have, but
it should have.
Going on from that, Wonder Man series has been greenlit for Disney Plus. Andrew Guest will serve as head writer for the series, and Shang-Chi director Daniel Destin Cretton will act as executive producer and possibly director of an episode. It was interesting too because there were some Wonder Man cameos or Easter eggs planned for Guardians 2 that was going to feature Nathan Fillion. Mm-hmm. That unfortunately got cut. So I'm wondering if he'll be cast in this role, since that was what he was going to be originally, or they were going to hint at that. Just given his age, I don't exactly know, but this is a lesser known character, so you don't exactly have to have an A-lister, but maybe something granting an actor of a caliber like Oscar Isaac would be something that they would be looking for. So this is pretty interesting, a lesser-known character. We'll wait to see what happens, but I'm pretty excited for it.
I'm excited for it. I think so. I think it's really interesting that they're going with this story because there's, like you mentioned, they thought about doing it in Guardians of the Galaxy, but there's also a lot of setup done already. Like there was a Grim Reaper's head showed up in WandaVision at one point. It was just like an Easter egg for fans. But if you read the comics, you know that Wonder Man and Grim Reaper are actually brothers. Where we already have Baron Zemo, and how he gets his powers, or how Wonder Man gets his powers is from Baron Zemo trying to again redo Super Soldier Serum and all that. So I think there's a lot of pieces in place already in the MCU to be able to bring him in at really any level. They can bring him in at the ground level, maybe with the Thunderbolts. They can bring him in at the cosmic level with the Guardians. There's a lot of different places that he can come in. So I think it's all just set up there already. So it shouldn't be that hard to bring him into the fold. But I think it'd be a cool story to play out.
I think so too.
Yeah, especially a lesser-known character that not a lot of people know about. So a lot of exciting stuff to come. And this is something that was a little bit baffling to me, but Lady Gaga is in talks as Harley Quinn in the Todd Phillips Joker sequel, which is going to be reworked to be a musical. Sounds very strange, but are you guys on board with these decisions?
I'll let you guys go first.
All right. So I really liked the Joker, and I thought it was perfectly good as its own film.
Agreed.
I think it's interesting that they went along with a sequel, but obviously they didn't make the money. It did so well, they can do it again. But they're bringing back the same director, same actor, and the fact that it's a musical, I think they're just kind of playing off the insanity of the Joker in general, and maybe I don't know if this becomes its own little franchise. It'd be really cool to see the Joker films just be a different genre every film. So, and the first one is very reminiscent of what's the movie? Taxi Driver. Yeah. And so then this one is gonna be obviously more of a musical. I don't know. I was actually joking around with Eddie, it's gonna be A Star Is Born, but with the Joker instead of Bradley Cooper. But I think it'll be interesting. I actually think, especially with how big musicals have been lately, and how musicals have stretched into different genres lately, it wouldn't be that too far-fetched to do a Joker film that's musical in nature, because as long as you have key elements of his relationship with Harley, and I don't think it'll be, I don't know, I think it'll be successful. I think it'll do well, and I think we'll be surprised by it in a good way.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting angle to take it on, and not something that I would have ever expected, or something I would have said, oh, we're going to have this Joker sequel, Harley Quinn. Yeah, we're going to make it into a musical. I think maybe this could be something to work out in its favor. I don't exactly, just because Todd Phillips is obviously somebody who is very familiar and is probably at home in some kind of comedic element. I don't think that exactly would work so much well with the sequel, especially with the tone that they established with that first movie. It's just one of those things, like, it sounds so auteur and so abstract that I don't exactly know what to make of it. Obviously, Lady Gaga is very talented as an actress. I think we've seen that recently with Versace, but it sounds something that's just so crazy, so fantastical, so abstract of a thought. I never would have pictured that. I don't know what to make of it.
Isn't this an insane idea worthy of the Joker?
Well, I mean, it is the Joker. Maybe, yeah. I mean, I could see it something working as like a very, very black comedy with just very much his sadistic sense of humor, like something I could see that working, but just with the tone that they've established, I can see it working in a kind of comic book film kind of setting. But obviously the first movie went for something incredibly realistic, which was good, and I like the take. But I don't know. I don't know if that realistic tone is going to work with the musical, or at least in the way that I think it would. So I'm very skeptical, but I trust everybody involved, and it just sounds very strange to me. So I'm just going to go into it with a grain of salt. Okay. But overall, what do you think about it?
Okay, so this is a strange decision. I'm not going to say it's not, but I actually get what Todd Phillips is going for, and I understand what his intention with this movie is. And I think there's going to be a lot of misperceptions about what he's going for. You mentioned earlier, Todd Phillips was very upfront about what he was doing with the Joker. He wanted to do a Joker story that was in the style of Martin Scorsese movies, mostly like Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy, which were 70s films and one from like the early 80s. He's a big fan of films from that era and the way that they're made and the way that they're paced. This movie is going to be modeled off of movies like All That Jazz and Cabaret, which are others type of 70s movies. Those are musicals, but those aren't like what people think of like Grease or West Side Story or Broadway musicals. Like All That Jazz, I could
like Chicago, something like that.
That being as a template, where that's like a musical film that's like realistic the way that like a lot of like gritty 70s movies are, but it goes into these little flights of fancy that are kind of dark, and it's about the character coming to term with their own death that's kind of imminent. And they have these really strange, bizarre musical numbers in the middle of the movie that don't feel like normal Hollywood, like a normal Hollywood musical, or a movie like Cabaret, which is about Nazis and the war. It's a very dark subject matter for a musical. So I don't think it's going to be what a lot of people think it's going to be. I think if you check out, like if you see like Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy, you have a good idea of what Todd Phillips is going for with the original Joker movie. So I think if you look at some of those 70s musicals and the director Bob Fosse that he's a fan of, I get what he's going for. And another thing sprung to mind when I was thinking about this. It reminded me of the song I Go Loony in The Killing Joke, where the Joker actually goes off on his little musical number when he's torturing Commissioner Gordon and showing him obscene photos of his daughter.
Yeah,
they're very disturbing photos. I'm not going to get to what they are, but I actually makes a lot of sense to me. Like, I thought it was so strange at first until I stopped and I thought about it, and I was thinking about what Todd Phillips is influenced by. I think that's the best way to go with this franchise at this point, because the first one works so good as a standalone movie, like Eric said, that this movie, even though it's an extension, it's probably going to be so different in style that it's going to stand on its own. And like you said, if it's successful and a third one comes out, I imagine he's going to model it off of a different genre or a different type of movies that he likes from that era. See, that's what he seems like he wants to do with this franchise. So I get what he's going for. Now, even though I am enthusiastic and I think it's kind of a great idea, it is ballsy, and there is the potential for it to be catastrophic.
Very gutsy. Very.
Yeah.
See, that's like, you had brought up good points. Yeah. Like, obviously you talked about the Joker's musical number in The Killing Joke, but the tone was different. It wasn't meant to be something that was ultra realistic. It's something that was taking inspiration from the stuff that you had mentioned. I think it was just because that I didn't really think about musicals that are set in a realistic kind of worldview or that kind of perspective. So it makes sense in that way of thinking about it, but it just sounds very strange. I think it's just something that makes me skeptical, because it's just, how are they going to capitalize on this, or how are they going to do this in the right way, and what are the kind of choices they're going to make. But this is a great creative team, somebody who understands what they're doing. So I don't think they would just do this out of left field just to do it for the heck of it. So I think there is a careful thought process to do something good and something worthwhile, but also something that feels different from other comic book movies. So I'm just going to trust them with it, but also go in pretty skeptical.
Yeah, I mean, it's either going to be one of two things. It's either going to be spectacular and amazing, or it's going to be disastrously bad. I don't see any.
Or disastrously amazing, maybe.
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I don't. It's such an extreme idea that I can't see people walking away from it going, meh, it was whatever. I don't think it's going to be a movie. You're going to have strong opinions on what it is, no matter what.
Exactly, but it sounds interesting. I guess once we at least see some behind the scenes footage or some kind of photos from the set, then we can make a little bit more of an accurate assessment. But that's what's going to be. We're getting a Joker sequel that is a musical and starring, possibly going to be having Lady Gaga's Harley Quinn. Going to be interesting. Last but not least, the Blade film will start filming in early July, so we should be getting the Daywalker, Mahershala Ali, sometime next year or early 2024. I don't know if they've fully given out a release date, but I think it's going to be next year. I can't wait for that. Blade, one of my favorite comic book characters. Hopefully we'll get to see a cameo from Wesley Snipes. I think that's very well earned and something that he deserves. That'd be something that'd be very cool. And moving on from that, we had another episode of Miss Marvel drop this week, episode 2. And we didn't get your take, obviously, last week, Eric, because you were absent. So what did you think about the pilot? Because a lot of us thought that it was probably one of the better pilots from a Marvel Disney Plus series. Is that something you felt? And what did you think about the series overall?
Yeah, I thought it was really good. I know a lot of people online were like not necessarily disappointed. They wanted to continue with this like grittiness that Moon Knight had established and all that. And obviously we're getting more of a almost like a Disney Channel TV show kind of vibe from it.
Yeah, exactly.
But me, like, I'm completely okay with that. So this is actually like the last few shows, like Moon Knight, for example, I didn't really want to watch in front of my kids, right? Like I have really young kids, but with Miss Marvel, I was like, oh, I could definitely, like, my wife and I just put it on.
With your son at least.
Yeah, and we can watch it, and they're like amazed by her powers and stuff, and obviously you don't understand what's going on, but it's something I could play, and it feels more like a family series, and obviously like they're diving really deep into her heritage, her family.
Mm-hmm.
We see a lot more of that in the second episode, but I really like it, and at first, when I first saw her powers, I was disappointed.
Yeah.
And it was funny because I actually had told my son, I was like, oh, it's Miss Marvel. It's Kamala, like from the show, because he watches the Spider-Man show and she shows up a lot and she has the stretchy powers. And he's like, she doesn't do that. I was like, nope, you're right. She doesn't do that, but that's how her powers work here. But I think it was interesting also to hear I forgot who it was, the directors or producers of the show say like, this isn't her like final like display of powers. Like the powers
like
are
her final form is what they said.
Yeah. So like it'll change over time. So we'll see what it changes into. But overall, I think it's really neat. I think they thought a lot about the character, who she is, and there was actually something really funny that a friend of mine pointed out, that she like put all this effort into like the first few minutes of the first episode to make like videos that she posts online, and it has like 5 views. I was like, oh, that's hilarious.
She had 2. The funny thing about that I meant to point out was she had 2 subscribers, 2 comments, and they were from Nakia and Bruno, her best friends. So yeah, I thought that was, and she went obviously way over the top and did her hardest on this video, and like there was incredible intricate thought and design into it.
Yeah, and it had like 5 views. This is way too relatable.
So one of the things that we had said that I had thought right away was that she feels like one of the most relatable characters that we've seen so far in a comic book setting or a live action depiction, especially just being that we're crazy comic book fans, we love superheroes, we have overactive imaginations. Was that something that you could relate to, at least like from that age or just in general?
Yeah, I think especially her as like an artist, and I mean myself coming from an immigrant family, right? Like especially when I was around high school age, and my parents were like, okay, it's time to decide what you're gonna do with your life, and me like wanting to do art and do like music, and my parents always like push me like, no, you can't do that. You have to do something else. So I think from that perspective, I relate a lot to this character, and we've seen a lot of this coming from Disney in general, right? Like with some of the other movies that have come out, like Encanto and all that. You see this like family dynamic that's been playing out in the shows, and seeing that played out in a Marvel in the MCU, I think is really cool to see. And yeah, that just makes her even more relatable, right?
I
That
actually
that
think that's a really cool aspect of the show, the immigrant aspect. Because I said this last week. I'm Mexican, but I'm like fourth generation at this point, so I'm
mm,
pretty far removed, so I don't have the same experiences. But I
mm,
had a lot of friends who are first generation Mexicans, obviously different races, but there's similarities like with how people approach this country, about how when they come, not really understanding necessarily. I don't mean this in a bad way, not understanding American culture to an extent, and not
Mm,
understanding what the kids are going to do or what they're going after, and these very strict rules that are seem unnecessary. But it
yeah,
comes from a place of love. It comes from a place of positivity. They're not bad people. They just don't
yeah.
understand. But I think a lot of my friends had similar experiences in high school
yeah,
that she had, and I remember being around certain parents like that, and their reactions to saying, "Oh, you're going to go to a party, or you're going to go to this, or a hangout," and making things bigger than they actually are. So I'm pretty sure a lot of people can relate to that experience.
Yeah, definitely.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
So overall, you really liked at least the pilot episode and where the direction it was going, right?
yes, I did. Yeah,
Nice, nice. And it's pretty cool that the first we have a rehash of from that first episode where she walks into the school. She's also very timid, very shy, and like afraid to stand her ground and speak up for herself. And we have her going through that same thing, but this time, she's walking in, she's got that swag, she has her chest out,
She
playing some
gave me
basketball,
Bully
turner goes,
McGuire
"Oh,
vibes.
by the way, my name's Kamala." Or he's like, "Hey, Cornelia. Oh, by the way, my name's Kamala." Huh. And you see her going
yeah,
around, and
yeah.
she has her swag, she has her confidence, she standing up for herself. And the funny thing too was when she first bumps into Cameron, which is obviously a character who has some kind of ulterior motivations. We find out at the very end of the episode. He's wearing blue and she's wearing purple, and obviously her powers are in this like purple bioluminescent color. And in the comics, Cameron, he actually has power where he's in like blue bioluminescence, and he's actually revealed to be an Inhuman because he was hit by the Terrigen Mist as she was in the comics run. So I thought that was pretty cool, and he can fire energy blasts and transfer his energy into an object, causing it to glow and combust. So it's pretty cool that the set design, obviously, that was delivered to try to have that reference from the comics. And another pretty cool thing was I don't know if you guys had seen, but there was a QR code when Bruno and Kamala were passing the hallways on one of the walls. And the same thing with like there was a lot of QR codes in Moon Knight. I think that's a pretty cool little thing that they're doing nowadays in these shows, and it's one of those little Easter eggs that we can expect. And I'm always like, okay, where's the QR code in this episode? But in this one, when you scan it, it takes you to issue number 15 of the 2014 run, which is what inspired this show, and that's where Kamala first meets Cameron. So this is a pretty good episode. And well, what did you guys think about it overall?
I
I
think it was a cool episode. Yeah, go
yeah.
ahead, Jimmy.
No, you could go on, Eric. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, I thought it was a really cool episode. I think they're starting to get more into her powers, and it's really interesting because I was talking to my wife about this as we were watching it. I was like, I wonder why they changed her powers, and she brought up it has to do something with her story. Like it has to do something with like where she's coming from. Like because they can easily do stretchy powers, right? Like they wouldn't just not do stretch like her powers from the comic books just to change it up. Like there has to be a reason behind it. And I think that her story and like they dive even deeper into their family and issues with like the partition between India and Pakistan and all that. And they even talk about her, I think it was her great grandmother, and like they allude to her walking on stars and all, using powers. And I think it's more relating to that And I think it was really cool. I think it's cool how they're just slowly bringing in more elements into it, and it's not necessarily just to, like, keep us guessing, but it's just we're slowly discovering her powers and her heritage at the same time that she is, and I think that's really cool to see it play out that way.
Because I definitely had that thought in the very beginning. I was like, wait, why what it really reminded me of is Green Lantern. Like that fact that she's able to do constructs and fire out like energy blasts. I was like, this feels very Green Lantern-y. But the fact it's all revolving around the bangle and obviously tying into her heritage, I think that was a smart choice. And also Kevin Feige had recently said too, that was because that was where the MCU was going. So they didn't want it to be, and I think maybe they just didn't want it to be related towards Mr. Fantastic, because when I saw her in the comics, I thought she was like Mr. Fantastic's daughter or somehow related to Mr. Fantastic. I didn't know she was involved in like the Marvel family. So I think with the cosmic power too, you have the bangle, the cosmic power. I think that's the way of showing that everybody who takes on the moniker are related to the Marvel family, that they're all have some kind of cosmic power, because obviously Captain Marvel, Carol has that, Photon has that, and now Kamala is going to have that. So that was a way of kind of showing that they're all similar and that they're all related in that aspect. So
I also like that her power doesn't actually come from the bangles; it comes from within. It shows that there's already something special about her that it activates. Yeah. It's not, your powers don't come from that; they come from you as a person.
That unlocks something, and
I think that might actually be alluding to her Inhuman origins within the comic.
Inhuman or Kree is what I thought.
Yeah, so maybe like it's like a Kree device that she's wearing. Yeah, that's helping her unlock her powers. I think that'd be really cool if she mentions in this episode, it's like, what if I'm Asgardian or something? Well, maybe she's not Asgardian, but maybe she is like a descendant of like the Kree. Yeah. Or hopefully we get something like that in this, just because they do allude a lot to stars, to the cosmic, to and we haven't really seen anything about the Kree or the Skrull since I think Captain Marvel. So I think it'd be really cool if we see some of that start showing up here.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing too. I realized, and it's kind of funny because one of the Illuminantes, I thought that was pretty funny. I had a pretty big chuckle when I heard that. One of them actually said that she was a snake, her great grandmother Aisha. So I'm thinking maybe that could be a reference to saying she could be a Skrull, because in the comics, Cameron, he serves a villain called Lineage. So Aisha, his mother / Najma, she could be a Skrull, and she could be the one who is the villain Lineage and is taking the form of her great grandmother to try to have, because she has some kind of ulterior motive for Kamala or needs her for something. So she could be Kree, could be Inhuman, could be a Skrull. It's pretty interesting how everything is set up and how we don't know a whole lot and what is going to happen next. So a lot of cool stuff going on.
Yeah. I also like how they're slowly bringing in, it has to be damage control, right? I don't think they've said it's the DODC yet, but it has to be
I think they did say.
They did say it.
They did say?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So I think damage control might be another like unifying factor here, because we saw in the She-Hulk trailers that the agents that they were using on there used the same guns that they try to use on Kamala in this one, which is like the guns that
the sonar, like the Stark,
the pulsing
sonar.
Ones. Yeah. So and they use the drones were the Stark drones too. So obviously they're doing something there. I think it'd be really cool if there's a tie-in between this show and She-Hulk, and it like finally we start seeing some more interconnecting stories from these shows, and I think it'd be really cool to see that start playing out a little more. Maybe the DODC is the way to go of how to, because they started calling them enhanced individuals again, which I think they've been calling. I think that's just an overarching term for everyone has powers.
It was meant to be in the place of mutants, but then it just involved pretty much anybody who had some kind of physical ability or some kind of power.
Yeah. So I really want to see where that's going too, because I think it's very clear that within the DODC, there's some people that are just like trying to do their job and really trying to help. And then I think the woman that was there, like, she was very clearly like targeting her and wants to like take her, and she had no problem with targeting mosques and temples. Whereas the other guy, the main guy, was kind of hesitant.
Dialogue.
What was that?
She's a pretty prejudiced person based on some of the dialogue and the things. That
very
in a very underhanded way.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting. I think it'd be really cool to just keep following with that and see where it goes.
And it's like something like, I don't know if you had seen last episode, but something that I had hinted at, especially because we know Secret Invasion is coming. So we don't know who is a Skrull or how many of them are living amongst the public. All of the DODC, they could be Skrulls. Obviously, we know their connection to Nick Fury, to Sword. So there could just be a whole lot of possibilities. Like, I thought that Agent Cleary, I had said from the very beginning, I think he's a Skrull just by the way he's acting. He seems to have some kind of awareness of Kamala's power and that he knows where it comes from or that he's seen it before. The fact of it being Kree or inhuman technology, that would really give a lot of credence to that. So there's just a whole lot. I think the best thing about this is just a whole lot of speculation, and there's so many Easter eggs in so many different ways that things could pan out because of what we know is coming in the future and all of that. So it's pretty cool. And I really liked how they actually gave a shout out to the Eternals. Obviously, we know that Nick Cameron said that his mom liked watching Kingo's movies. Kingo was Kumail Nanjiani, the Eternal from the Eternals. So
like
I thought
every generation thinks that they're crushing on a different guy
to protect his identity.
Grandfather, father, and the son, and really it's all the same person.
And I thought that was also a foreshadowing to her too, because obviously either she is Kamala's grandmother or maybe a Skrull in disguise or whatever, but she could be ageless, and she could, or someone who ages very slowly if she's an Inhuman, because obviously we know that they age a lot slower than humans. So that could have been their way of trying to foreshadow and say that she has a connection to him because he's ageless like her, or ages very slowly. So that was another like cool little thing I wondered about, like, I think there's something a little bit more there. And then at the very ending, I was like, oh, I was right. Something I didn't know if you guys, it's one of those little things, but I don't know if you guys noticed this, but the boy that Kamala saves at the tower at the very end, that was the same, he was the one who stole Nakia's shoes in the mosque in the very beginning when she's like, wait, where did my shoes go?
I didn't know that.
He was wearing the shoes?
When you see, you see a very small glimpse of the shoes, and those are the same shoes that, now, you don't fully see them, but you see Nakia put them on the rack, and I'm like, wait a minute, I think those are the same shoes. So I went back and I was like, oh, she should have let this guy fall. Freaking thief stealing shoes.
Well, she did. He did fall.
He did fall.
I mean, could have broken his back at least.
Meant a real fall. Nick meant a real fall. Not anything that's not broken by anything.
Yeah, they did you're gonna laugh at this, Eric, but there was another little Easter egg to Frogman.
Really?
Did you catch it?
I did. No.
It was very, very small. So in all the memes that went about with Kamala and her saving the kid and like all the pizza ice cream, one of the user names was Frogman Jules.
Oh.
So they were speculating that he had like got that shot, like he was running around jumping, and then because it was a shot that he had taken like underneath the action. So with everyone, it was like I think that was just a cool little Easter egg alluding to him appearing in She-Hulk.
Frogman was just there.
You watched this episode.
That's hilarious.
You watched this episode with an eagle eye, didn't you, Nick?
I tried to.
Yeah, because I noticed you're picking up.
There were just little things I noticed.
I need to go find that. That's funny.
I play it back in slow motion sometimes, but so what do you guys think about everything going on involving her do you think that's really her grandmother? Do you think she's a Skrull? Do you think she's a Kree? Do you think she's an Inhuman? What are some of the things you guys are speculating about what they're setting up for the future and what could be happening?
I think it's her grandmother, and I think she's going to learn a little bit more, and I think her family is probably misrepresenting who her grandmother is a little bit. And especially the way that they got, I mean, because a lot of the stuff that they say is got the gossipy stuff. That reminds me of the shit some of my family members say when they get together.
Yep.
When I hear it, I'm like, where did you get this from? Feels like you're like, just spinning whatever your paranoid thoughts are in their head and then grafting them onto somebody, whether or not they're true. So I don't think, I do think that's her grandmother. This is like, go on. Actually, I'll mention this after. What do you think, Mark?
I agree with you. I think it's the grandma. I think she probably has inhuman powers. That's why she's lived this long. I think it's kind of weird the relationship that Kamran has now, because that would make him her like great uncle
or whatever.
something.
Yeah,
I didn't want to say anything. It's not weird that he's
there's some like
and
Lucas
some
lusting.
Leia stuff
Back to the
going
Future
on.
kind of vibes. Or...
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, so that was really weird because hopefully he's adopted or something, or I don't know. But I do think this is going off track a little, but I do think he has his powers already, because that dive he did from the top of the building into the water and be like completely unfazed. I think there has to be something going on there.
Yeah.
Just don't do that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think they're definitely related. I think I'm going in that direction just because the fact that Kamala lied to her brother, was like, "Oh, this is our cousin," and then by the end I was like, "Psych, I might actually be your cousin." Yeah.
But I mean,
So
he also
I think
touched
cool.
her in like a little bit of an intimate way, like on the hand or the arm. So like now playing that back, I'm like, wait, what?
That might have been more of a protective.
It could have
like,
been
hey,
just the
like
way.
it's okay, like calm down.
It probably was, but the fact that the show keeps portraying her having like an obvious major crush on him, it gives it a different vibe when he does that. Whether or not he's actually protecting her, I think people will perceive it differently when they realize, wait, what? They're related. It's almost like a Princess Leia, Luke Skywalker scenario.
Or Marty McFly and his mom in the 1950s is more what I think about.
Yeah,
that's true.
Or something.
But yeah, what were you gonna say, Jimmy?
Oh, this is just an off, and this is not related to what you guys were talking about the show, but it is about the show. What's her Nakia? Nakia, that's her friend's name, right?
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
I actually relate to her a little bit more in terms of like your perception, because she has that scene where she's talking to her in the bathroom, and this has just been my experience being like a fourth generation Mexican. I've been around people where I'm not Mexican enough for a lot of people, and I've gotten so much shit for that. But I've also been on another side where I'm too white for some Mexicans, but around some white people, I've actually been too Mexican for them at the same time. And after you realize that those are stupid things that you shouldn't really worry about. So I actually kind of related to her talk when she's talking to Kamala about that. I feel like a lot of people who are third or fourth generation, their families were immigrants, but third or fourth generation would probably relate to that experience.
Yeah, I mean, I'm first generation, and I relate to that. It's definitely something that happens with like, especially cousins. Like, like you go back to Mexico and you're the American, but here you like hang out with certain people and like, oh, hey, look, he's a Mexican. It's like, okay, whatever. But
funny.
Yeah, it's relatable.
It's funny you mentioned that, Jimmy, because it's the same with me. But the thing is, I don't ever get seen as Mexican, even when I'm around white people. When I'm with Mexicans, I get seen as white. When I'm around white people, I get seen as really white. So it's one of those things. Like in any time, like my
the chameleon over here.
Anytime my primos would come over from Mexico, it was always cool. I was like, oh, let's go out in public. Let's go out here. Let's go out there, because I wanted to be seen as Mexican. Oh, they're like speaking Spanish, and there's that white boy amongst them. Oh, that guy's not actually white. That guy's actually Mexican. So it was one of those things, like I related to it, not so much in that same vein, but just in that scope of how she's talking about it and how she copes with it, and that, oh, it's not easy. Like I work very hard, and it's not something that I can ever truly get away from, but I've learned to embrace it and learn that it's just part of the struggle and part of my journey, but it's also part of what makes me who I am. So that part I definitely related to, and it was a cool little moment that they had. A lot of character development there. And
good, because it's letting you know that you should just be you, not worry about what other people's perceptions of you are.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think and they're really diving into that in this story, because at first even just between the first episode and the second episode, she wants to be very independent. She wants to break away from her family. She wants to do her own thing. And then she has this power now that's so closely knit to her family and where she comes from, where I think she's starting to realize that, yes, you are your own individual. You have your own things. But at the same time, you need to respect and know where you came from in order to like reach your full potential. And I think that's really kind of where this show might be going, in that direction. Is like trying to find yourself and your own identity within like your likes and your passions and within your family and what they brought to you. So I think it's really cool how they're just exploring that.
And I think that could be how she attains her final form, or a more powerful form, or one where she's able to fully embrace and fully capture the scope of her powers. Or maybe it'll be like the comics where she gets wrapped into a cocoon and has to break out. I think that's going to be something also. I definitely think it's going to be somewhere along the lines.
That'd be cool to see.
Though.
Yeah.
So it was pretty cool. And the more, Eric had touched upon this, but it was pretty cool just how they've done a really good job of wrapping the story around her heritage, her tradition, where her family comes from. Like we had talked about the partition and everything that went along there, and how that is what also is hinting at her further Kree-inhuman physiology, because that's how her great-grandmother was able to get her grandmother back on the train. So I just like how they had talked about that, and it's not something like it was one of the worst refugee crises in the world that we have ever seen. So it's cool that they were able to tie it back, when world history, they can tie it back into there and kind of play around with it and do what they want with it. That's really cool, really creative storytelling, in my opinion.
I agree. I mean, and I've always said this before, like, I think a lot of like comic books or anything, just like fiction in general, especially this type, it's so fantastical, like what superheroes do. I think sometimes it's important to try to ground it to something in the real world or something a little bit more relatable, because it makes it a little bit closer to our world when a lot of these historical events, which are significant events, have an impact on that universe as much as it does on our universe.
I think honestly, that's what really captured me into the world of Watchmen, because we were watching it from that, or experiencing it from that alternate take on history. Where Dr. Manhattan was able to turn the tides for America and change the scope of history as we knew it.
I mean, if you think about it, that's interesting, because if superheroes actually did exist, and if they existed for the past 100 years, it would dramatically alter the course of history in ways that we wouldn't be able to comprehend. It would be a vastly different world, and history would have proceeded in a much different way. So I think it's always important to address some of these real world topics within a superhero context, to see how it would affect the universe.
Very cool. Very cool. Very creative from the storytelling perspective. But what do you guys rank this episode on a scale of 10?
Go ahead.
I'll give it an 8.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I give it an 8 too.
Yeah, it's going good. It's just because it's still early on. I can't really give it a 10 yet.
Yeah.
But I think
I don't think it's reached those levels, but it's very good. The cast is great. I really like a lot of it. Continued that trend of where we can see like the messages and the neon lights in the background. That was something that was really cool. What we had talked about in that first episode, that really made it feel different, and also from telling the story completely from Kamala's perspective. We were getting that more when she's daydreaming, seeing, like the neon lights, her and camera, and that's pretty cool, and further reassuring that point that this is completely from her perspective and letting the audience know. So a lot of that is, there's a lot of creative stuff going on. Would like to see it reach that next tier and that next level. So a lot of awesome stuff to come. So with all that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Make sure you guys follow us on IG at Heroes and Mutants Podcast. Share with your friends. Hit that like button. Subscribe. Make sure you follow and watch Ms. Marvel. We're going to be covering it on a week-by-week basis. We'll get to the boys. It's just we're not all caught up there yet, but we will do that in due time. So make sure you guys check out Ms. Marvel.
Really, really quick. We should cover that Catwoman movie next week.
I honestly, I forgot about it. But
I forgot about it until this moment, but that's okay.
Catwoman Hunted is on HBO Max, a really, really great Catwoman animated film that is freaking awesome. Thank you so much. Eric actually is the one who recommended it. We probably would have covered it at some point in time, but he was the one to make it happen. So make sure you guys watch that. We're going to review that soon next week, probably too. So make sure you guys take it easy. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
All right.